great opportunity for brands now around content creation where it sort of didn't exist, and channels to reach consumers that didn't exist. And of course, we've been in the social space for a while, and this sort of this intermediated media world. But what's exciting for you now in terms of getting your brand across?
Yeah, I actually, as someone who's been a bit of a digital pioneer, for me it doesn't feel new, because the second social media really started to proliferate and brands were becoming media owners with their own channels, all of a sudden we all had to get in the content business, as messy and confusing as this has been. And it's definitely been a journey of convincing established organizations, no, we actually are both advertisers and publishers now. And it's, it seems a paradox, but we're actually doing both. I think what's changed is the landscape continues to mature. Kids just playing around on as influencers, they didn't know they were influencers, just playing around creating content on YouTube suddenly are industries in and of themselves. So the whole thing is sort of growing up at this rapid fire pace, and brands that were latecomers are now in there. So if you were early, now you're suddenly surrounded by competitors making a lot of noise. And I think it just creates that much more of a burden and a necessity to figure out how to differentiate.
So what are some key points about content? Is it humor? Is it authenticity? What are some of the key elements around this sort of content as a publisher that you guys see?
Yeah, I always put a lens that's frankly no different than the lens we need to put on ourselves as human beings, which is what's the sort of authentic expression of yourself that makes people want to engage. And that doesn't mean you don't adapt how you express yourself in different contexts, right? So I might behave a little differently at a dinner party than I do when I'm hanging out with my friends. It's the same thing for brands, but I think the first rule for me, and maybe in some ways the only rule, is finding the authenticity that is within that brand's persona, and then finding the different ways to express it. Other than that, I don't know that there are any rules. I don't think you can say it's always about comedy or it's always about pathos. It could be any of those things, just like we as people might express ourselves differently in different contexts.
Cool, and finally we're kind of in the middle of the new fronts. We're getting ready for the upfronts, and TV video, as we've known it, is going through big changes. How do you see it?
Well, we're a brand that still believes in TV because we want to be kind of an indie brand, but our footprint is mass and our business is mass, and we need to reach a lot of people. So we love television, but I also love the ability to tell deeper stories, to engage in smaller, fun ways, in ways that don't feel as promotional. And for me, the challenge is, how do you do the whole thing? That's what has made the job of a marketer harder. It's all sort of exponential, and for we as people consuming media, it's exponential. So we're all making choices. I do think the changing media landscape is something that is requiring us to constantly be on our toes and adapt. And there's no one answer yet. It's emerging. It's emerging and continuing.